Thanks for tuning in to this edition of the RENSHAW Report. Murray I, reporter from the city Too Tough to Die, New London. So I'm driving down 95 the other day, and as I do every day, and these big tractor trailers are zooming by me one after the other. And I'm thinking to myself, without these tractor trailers and drivers, we'd be dead in the water, because they deliver all our goods, all our foods, all our supplies. And then I thought, we don't give these guys the respect that they deserve, or the appreciation that they deserve. And the more I thought about it, the more I wanted to get a real professional truck driver on the show to tell us what it's all about. So I had to call Monair. I had to call Mo, find out who I could get. And certainly, as always, gave me the good recommendation, Tom Moysey. Tom is our guest today, and Tom has worn many hats through his career. Very interesting guy. He's been a diver. He's been a tractor-trailer truck driving school. I don't even know half of what he's doing or what he's doing now. But he knows about truck driving. He knows about over-the-road, all that stuff. And Tom, thank you for taking the time to come on the show to discuss this interesting profession that has to get in a guy's blood to do it, because I don't. We all want to do it. The romance of the over the road, as we see it on TV, is mystifying. Let's start from the beginning. Tell us a little bit about what it's like to be a professional truck driver and drive these big babies.
While you alluded to some of it there, going over the road can get very lonely. It's a different lifestyle. It is a lifestyle. And when you're out there, if you let that aspect get to you, it can definitely affect your driving. So you have to be aware that it's a job and maintain your professionalism no matter what goes on out there, because you're in a situation where you make a mistake, someone dies. You are pulling 80,000 pounds in a rig. Sometimes the triaxles you see on the road are 75, 76,000, and without a permit. These numbers I throw out there, just remember these are everyday numbers that people can just get in the truck and drive it without getting a special permit. We can get runs over 120, 130,000, which we do. We move with the new company I work for now, with Sahaki and Sons. We have equipment that's over the 120,000, 130,000, but that needs a special permit. You get routed, and things have to. You got to go through DOT and find the right route for bridge weights and so on and so forth. But I'm talking about just everyday trucks that you see on the road. The max we can put in one of those is 80,000 pounds. That's 40 tons. And if you do the math and you know a little bit about physics, once you get that moving, it's very hard to stop that. It's not like a car. So we get cars that will get in our space, in our safety zone. We like to have a big cushion all the way around us. Don't ride alongside these rigs. If I have to move left or right, it's not going to end well for you if you crawl up underneath us. And that drives a driver crazy, especially me. It's a pet peeve of mine when I get people locked into the left side of me thinking they're getting better mileage because they feel a draft or a pull from my tandems. All you're doing is cutting off one of my avenues of escape. So if something happens up in front of me in the rain or in inclement weather of any kind, and someone spins out and I need to make an adjustment, you just took away one of my tools. It'd be like a plumber going in there, and before you go in the house, I take away your pipe wrench and your torch. Well, wait a minute, how am I going to do this job? That's what you're doing to a truck driver by riding alongside of him. Get out of there. You pull up, pass him, or get away from him. But a very frustrating aspect of the job is to have people around you, because you're always thinking safety. You don't want to hurt anybody out there, and anything can go wrong. They're mechanical beasts, and as we all know, things break down. Tire blows. It's 110 to 120 pounds of air pressure in that tire, and a lot of weight on it. So the air pressure inside isn't really what you're concerned about. You're concerned about the fact that there's up to 34,000 pounds of weight on a set of tandems. So when that sidewall in that tire lets go, it's going to do some damage. If you're riding right alongside my tandems and that happens, it's going to take out the side of your car.
Is a truck driver under pressure?
We're under a lot of pressure. You're regulated by so many different agencies, from federal motor carrier to the state to revenue. You have time restraints, you have weight restraints, you have your physical aspect where you have to go for a DOT physical, you have drug tests that you have to pass, you have log books that you have to keep, whether now the most modern are electronic, but still you have to be aware of that time. You have pickup and delivery times. You have to deal with unions. You have to deal with people on the dock that if they tell you to be at this dock at 7 o'clock, most of these places, if you get there at 7:01, they won't take you. They'll say, well, you missed your pickup or you missed your drop off. You got to wait for the next shift, or you got to wait for another round to come around. They all run their docks a little bit different, especially in New Jersey. We all know what goes on in New York and New Jersey down there. That's a whole nother show. But you get into northern New Jersey, and they tell you your pickup time is 8:30. You can call ahead sometimes, and you be nice to them, and they'll let you in, and they'll get you work you in ahead of time. But most of the time, they'll tell you, pull off to the side or go down to the truck stop and wait. 8:30 was your schedule, and we got to put you in then. And if you're dropping, and you get there, and they say your appointment's at 8:30, you get there at 8:40. You missed it. There's either someone else in the door, or that crew that was going to unload you in a live unload is moved on to another trailer. If you're just dropping the trailer, like if I go down to Pennsylvania, you go to any of the soda places, or Nestle. Nestle's a good one. Runs like the Kellogg cereals and stuff like that for Shaw's Supermarket, Stop and Shop, whatever. You're just going to go around. Dispatch will assign you a parking spot, and then your trailer that you're picking up. So you'll drop your empty or drop your load there and pick up an empty, or drop the empty off and grab a loaded trailer out of there. Gets all assigned. Those aren't too bad because they're all done. They're not even on a tight schedule there. You just grab and go. But the ones where you're doing a live unload and I'm in the truck waiting for you to unload, if I'm there too late, I miss it. I stand a chance of getting bumped back 6, 8, 10 hours, which throws off the whole schedule, because I'm going to go from that loading dock down the road and pick up another load. Or I'm going to take that load to another distribution center, or even a small, like a printer out in Harrisburg. I dropped rolls of paper from Bangor, Maine. That printer is waiting for that specific paper because of the way the economy is. It's like auto parts store. Everybody can relate to that. When you go into a store and you say, hey, do you have this switch or this light bulb? They'll, no, we have to order that. Well, what do you mean you have to order? Because it costs a lot of money to keep that stuff on the shelf. So they've scaled that way back. You don't have the accessibility, and being Americans, we're impulse buyers. When we want something, we want it now. We want to go in the store, get it, and go home. We don't want to order 2, 3 days out, 4 days out. We want it now. So when you bring paper out to a printing company, a small mom and pops, 20 employees out there in Harrisburg, they're waiting on that specific roll of paper to print the local newspaper for the night. If you get stuck or something happens and you can't get there, there's a lot of ramifications for you not bumping that dock on time. So yes, is a lot of pressure on the drivers, to make time.
What's the average age of a truck driver? Is there such a thing?
I don't know that you could. Yeah, I would tell you from being out there, most truck drivers are older. You're talking probably young 30s on up. I don't know that driving over the road interests that generation and of the teenagers in their 20s, early 20s anymore. I would say most of your over the road long distance drivers are older.
Are women getting into trucking more and more?
Not like they should. There's great opportunity out there. And the latest numbers are less than 3% of the over the road drivers are female. But it's a little bit harder on them out there because it's geared toward the male. But I've trained phenomenal female drivers, and some of them are still out there. Some of them have switched, come off the road. They run locally now for some companies.
Now, what do you prefer, Tom, being a truck driver? Do you like the over the road trips or local? Well, you're probably not driving like you used to, right?
No, I like the over the road. Locally, the way it works is the shorter the run, the more work you're going to do. So if I take a load from here to a warehouse in Pennsylvania, I'm not touching anything. I get out, I open the doors, I slide my tandems back so that the forklift can get in the trailer without it tipping, and they unload me. The light will turn green. I'll see it in my mirror. The light turns green. I pull away from the dock. I close my doors. I check in with dispatch, get them to sign my bill of lading, and I'm gone. I'm on to the next assignment. If you drive locally, what we call P&D, pickup and delivery, you're a pallet jack, you're in the back of that truck, you're in and out, you're moving the material, you're unloading it. If you drive for, like Werner Enterprises has a contract to run Dollar Generals. When you get to the Dollar General, you have to unload all of that. Lift gate, side gates, whatever they have, take it in the store, and in some cases, they have a specific spot for things.
Do they get paid more money for that?
No, but they're home every night, so there's a trade-off. They're like U.S. Foods, or how about soda guys, Coke, Pepsi, those guys. When they get going in the summer, you all know 96, 98 degrees out there, and they don't catch a break. They got to unload all that soda by themselves out of the back of that truck. Sometimes they'll send a helper with them, like UPS, sends a helper out. But those guys work. That's physical, and they're out there in the heat, the rain, the snow. Like I said, we're Americans. We demand our product. They're not going to want to hear, how come you don't have any Coke on the shelf? Well, it snowed out. I don't know. I don't want to hear that, right?
How many hours a day can you drive?
You're allowed by law to drive 11 out of a 14-hour window over the road in a commercial motor carrier. You get a 14-hour day, 11 hours of driving, whichever comes first, either the 14 hours of work day or the 11 hours of driving. You're done. Then you have to take 10 hours off. You have to be off duty, which can include the sleeper. It can be wherever. It's just you need to be off duty for 10, and that resets that clock. Then also during the week, if you work Monday through Friday job where you're not driving on the weekend, they run on what they call a 7-day, 60-hour schedule. So they can only, in that 7-day, any 7-day window, if I take your calendar and your log and I put down the 8-day ruler, in that, or 7-day ruler, in that 7 days, you cannot be over 60 hours of work, which includes your driving, your on duty, off duty, everything, right? If you're over the road, we run 7 days a week. So we shift to what they call an 8-day, 70-hour schedule. Same rules apply, it's just more time, 10 more hours of driving for 8 days. So in any 8-day window that I pick on a sliding scale, any 8 days I can't exceed 70 hours of work.
What's that equate to? How many miles a day would you be able to?
Well, legally, the industry uses an average speed of 55 miles an hour wherever you go.
That's not true.
Right. So for our calculations, for fuel, for distance, for all of that. Comfortably, it gets a little tricky because you're allowed to drive 11, but sometimes it all depends on your loads, where you're going, what you're picking up, when you're picking up, the time off, how much time did they give you. Sometimes they'll give you a bill of lading and they'll dispatch you and tell you this has to be in South Carolina by Thursday morning at 9. Well, it's only Monday. So I'll look at the chart and I'll say, okay, I can pull up the GPS and I can make it there in 31 hours of driving. So you got to think for every 11 hours of driving, I need 10 off. So at 31 hours of driving, I need 30 hours off. So that 31 hours just became 61 hours. See how that we add that to it, right? So if I look at it, it's 61 hours total time for me to get there, and I have an extra day. Well, if I'm coming through Reno, I'll swing down through Vegas and take a day off down in Vegas. I'll let dispatch know, hey, I'm gonna put what we call home time or off time. I'm gonna take it in Vegas. Or you're coming through, Grand Canyon, or you're in the Black Hills, wherever you want to be, Niagara Falls. If you pass through one of them and you have the time, then you take a little time off. My theory in the whole thing is I like to drive about 9 hours at a clip, because
Without stopping.
Well, you have to stop. If you're going to drive more than 8, you have to show a half-hour break in that 8-hour window. Somewhere I have to take a lunch break. Before I get to 8 hours. If I get to 8 hours, then it'll shut you down. You gotta take that half-hour break. It's mandatory in a motor carrier or household goods, not in a coach. We'll get to the motor coach in a second, which is a whole nother topic. I like to drive 9 hours, 8 to 9 hours at a clip, routinely. Every once in a while, you run the 10. If I come within an hour or 2 hours of my stop, I'm not going to, stop at 9 hours. I'll get to that stop, and then I'll take my 10 off. But where that comes around to bite you is at the end of that. Remember the 8-day, 70-hour schedule? If you keep running 11 hours and 11 hours and 11 hours, after you do 6 of those, right? Because you got 11 and then you need 10 off. So that's a 21-hour window. So after you do that, by the end of the week, you're now up against that 70-hour clock. If you hit that 70-hour clock in an 8-day window, you can reset that whole thing by taking 34 hours off. So my theory is it's the tortoise and the hare theory. In that, if you rush, you bump into that 70-hour clock. Now you have to take 34 hours off. You are sitting in a truck stop. Now I'm driving only 9 hours at a clip, 9, 9, 9, 9. I don't bump into that in any 8-day window. While you're taking your 34 hours off, I'm going to catch you, and then I'm going to pass you, doing the same run. So that's my theory in doing that. A lot of guys say, well, no, I want the 34, and they'll just run hard 11 hours a day, and then they'll take their 34 hours off. The problem with the 34 is you've got to time that so that you are somewhere where there's something to do, because you're not going to just sit in the truck for 34 hours. You'll be bored out of your mind in there. Even with the satellite TV or whatever they have available, you're going to be bored. So you got to be careful with that, because you could wind up in Shenandoah Valley off of 81 in Virginia at some mom and pop truck stop for 34 hours staring at trees.
So Tom, you're taking a break. You're driving this big tractor trailer. If you go to do something, how do you get there? I mean,
You can Uber.
Oh, Uber. Okay, got it. Okay.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
That's a taxi. The old days of the taxi or a
So
walk.
you park at the truck stop.
Park at the truck stop
Got it.
and call the Uber.
Now, what makes a good truck driver? How do you know if you're cut out for this? What are the common denominators? Obviously, I'm not a good candidate.
Most truck drivers will tell you that they look at somebody, they can tell you the way they climb into the truck. You know, I could tell by the way somebody gets around the rig whether or not they're going to make it. It's a big responsibility. There's a lot going on there. You have to know that rig mechanically. You have to know all the systems in that rig. It's like when I was on a submarine. You have to know, even though it wasn't my job to pump the wastewater or make the potable water or anything like that, in order to qualify to be on that submarine, you have to know all those parts. Driving the truck is no different. You have to know the air systems. You have to know those brake systems. You have to know the coolant. You have to know all of the electrical stuff, the warning lights and going on, especially nowadays, these modern trucks, they run them off a laptop. And in fact, they have connection to them. They can even diagnose them while you're going down the road. At headquarters, they can tell everything about that truck when it feeds back in through the satellite. They know everything about that truck right from the office. They don't even have to hook a laptop to it. They can diagnose it right from the office. And they have screens.
I mean, we're going over a lot of stuff here. It's all fascinating. Being a teacher of many truck drivers that are out there today, it's always amazed me how they back these things in. Mm-hmm. How do you teach a student how to do that? I'm still having trouble with my boat trailer.
Well, the smaller the trailer, like you put a wood splitter or a jet ski or a short boat on the back, they're actually harder to back up than a rig, because they turn them way faster. And most new drivers, the number one issue with a new driver is oversteering. So anybody out there, if you're getting a camper or you're getting a boat or you call me for a lesson, which I do lessons on the side. You call me up and you say, hey, I can't get my camper in my driveway. The first thing I'm going to say to you is you're steering too much. I don't even have to come see you drive. I know that a new driver trying to get something backed up.
So there's no electronics that do this automatically for me?
Apparently, I haven't seen one, and it would probably drive me crazy, but Ford has one of those trailering things where you select with the knob and it tells you turn the knob in the direction you want the trailer to go, and you watch it in a screen. And I don't know. I have never seen one. I hope it works, but I have my doubts. There's just too much going into backing up that a computer is not going to be able to do it.
You put them on a dime. You don't back into anything.
That's the goal.
I mean, that's a hell of a judgment call that you're making from the rearview mirror. Am I correct?
Right. And I tell my students, and my instructors will say, listen, we don't get paid to hit things. Don't hit anything. If you miss or you don't make it, any good truck driver out there has half a brain is going to tell you that we don't always hit every target spot on the money in the first try every time. A good truck driver knows when he's going to make it or when he's not going to make it. And furthermore, an even better truck driver knows enough not to try. You can't fit a square peg in a round hole. You can't fit 10 pounds of you-know-what in a bag, in a 5-pound bag. It's just not going to go. Physics is in the way. So a good, really good, seasoned truck driver knows that trailer's not going in there for a myriad of reasons. Who knows? It could just not be enough room to swing it. It might be too narrow. It might be too slippery. He has so many factors that are involved with this, is that a good truck driver is going to look at all of the big picture and say, you know what, I'm not even going to attempt this. I'll just go down, I'll turn around, I'll come back up the street, and we'll park as close as we can to unload this, and we'll offload it with a forklift, something like that. I can't get in that loading dock.
What are your thoughts about the new 14 cents per mile tax Connecticut has recently applied to the trucking industry?
Yeah, this is a direct, it's a tax. And if the consumer thinks they're not paying for this, they're kidding themselves. This is going to get passed on, and it's only, they have the classifications of the vehicles. It's the Class 8s without a trailer and down are exempt. So it's anything like you take a triaxle by itself, it doesn't have to pay, it's exempt. If you hook a tag-along trailer to that triaxle, now they're paying the mileage. And whatever that driver or that company is hauling or moving or doing, they're going to calculate the mileage and they're going to add that to the shipping charges. Well, the shipper or the receiver are both going to look at it and say, okay, you're right. Now we're going to add it to the price of the product. So it's another way of raising the consumer's taxes because, like you started the show, everything moves in a truck. So if we want to tax toilet paper, put the tax on the truck driver. It's going to trickle all the way down through, and the consumer is going to wind up paying it. But the governor can go on TV and tell you that he didn't raise taxes. Another lie. He raised the taxes. In effect, it's a tax on the consumer.
Are you an advocate of the driverless vehicle, the driverless truck, and
No.
what's going on in the industry with regard to that?
I can't stand them. And I'll tell you why. Is it's growing up on a farm, doing what I've done, driving through the military, training drivers 15 years, driving myself. There are so many factors involved. And I use the analogies when I train my students and I talk to them, is that what separates humans from computers is your ability to make a decision based on the things that are around you. A computer only has so many inputs to it. It's not going to see the tree limb that's hanging or the wire that's hanging over there. It's the driverless autonomous vehicle is not going to know there's a kid on a bicycle right there in that driveway. And if that kid at any second comes out of that driveway, that computer's not going to know enough or have enough input to take evasive action in that truck. They're having a hard time with those trucks in California. The first or the second run that any one of those tractor trailers made, the thing went right through a red light and killed 2 people. So they're a long way off. They may have their use in a yard, in a port, or somewhere where the pattern, like the robot in the hospital that delivers the drugs, or the cleanup robot, in Stop and Shop that clean up in aisle 6, it detects a spill. In a confined area or restricted movement, they may have their use there in a warehouse environment. But out on the road, things change. And they change too fast for today's computers. Maybe in the future, but today's computers.
So they're a long way away.
They're a long way off from being, and think about this too. They tout this great mileage. For instance, the F-150 pickup truck. It can go 400 miles. I think the number is 400 plus miles. You hook your boat to it, or you put a load in the back of the truck, the thing goes less than 100 miles. Or you turn the heat on, or you turn the air on, or it gets real hot, or you're going up through the mountains. It changes all those numbers. So they can brag about how much these tractor trailers, they have 1,200 horsepower and they can go 500 or 600 miles as a single unit, bobtailed, no trailer, no weight. Pepsi's putting weight on these things out in California. They ordered 30 of them. They're in the news. These things are breaking down faster than they can load them because they're putting weight on them now and trying to drive through normal conditions, whatever that environment may be, could be dusty, could be cold, could be snow, who knows? It's changing everything. I don't know if they didn't test them right, or they didn't, take them out to these conditions and try them and see what they did, but they're batteries. Everybody knows you put a battery in the cold. You want to find out if you got bad batteries in your fleet? Just wait for the first cold night. You go out at 20 degrees and you start the trucks, and 11 out of 13 of them don't start. There's your bad batteries right there. That's the easiest way to find them, is wait for a cold snap. So now we got all these electric trucks. It takes away from their performance, and I don't think they advertise that well enough.
Are you an electric car advocate? And do you think that's a solution to?
Absolutely not. No, not at all.
So I'm at the office today, and trying to figure out what to talk about. Richie Messina came up. I don't know if you know Richie from Waterford. He came up. We're just talking about it. A couple of comments, the questions he had. What's it like eating at these truck stops? Are we talking good meatloaf dinners with mashed potatoes, and the television, the YouTube makes it it look very appetizing. What can you tell us about laying over at a truck stop a little bit?
You have to be careful.
There's good ones and bad ones.
There's good ones and bad ones, like everywhere else.
And how do you know? How do you find out that?
You spend some time out there. You have your chains. Obviously, the big truck stops will have a Wendy's. The pilots, they make deals with those restaurants, and they have the common names that we're all used to. Or if you go down south, they change. Hardee's is bigger down there, or something might change that way. But they're all pretty much the same with the fast food. Then the best way is to wander outside of the truck stop and find the mom and pops, the little restaurants or the little diners, just like you would in your hometown. It's someone else's hometown. That's all. You just got to find the spots.
Now, if you're on a long trip, do you in your mind do you plan for this? Where you're going to eat after you've been driving for 8 or 10 hours and you're hungry? And
I take coolers with me. I plug in the cooler.
So you cook your own.
Yeah, you can take the best trick in trucking is a small crock pot, because you can we'll bungee cord it down to a shelf or to the top of your cooler and plug it into the inverter and put whatever in there, your chicken and your veggies and everything like that, and just put it on medium and you're driving. You're going to drive 8, 9, 10 hours. You can make a heck of a pot roast in a crock pot in 8 hours. You put it on low and just let the thing cook, and it's good. Now there's your meal when you get where you're going. That in like a small George Foreman grill, where it's
set it and forget it.
You just set it up, and they're small enough, and you can make just about anything. There's a whole, if anybody's interested, if you go online, or even on Facebook, you can follow. They call themselves over the road chefs. You see some of these meals these guys make in their rigs. It's impressive. Some of them carry small gas grill or small charcoal grills that they tie down to the back of the truck. And we get where they're going, they pull it off the truck, set it on the ground, and throw a couple burgers or a steak on there and eat.
Automatic transmission have taken over the big trucks today, I'm told. Is that been a big improvement?
Well, it's a touchy subject. Most truck drivers, professional, real truck drivers, prefer not to drive an automatic. But there comes a time, depending on how long you've been out there, any disabilities you may have, and you might just be tired of shifting. You might just say, you know what, I'm going through New York City all the time in traffic jams, and I'm just tired of riding a clutch in second or third gear all the way up I-95. I switch to an automatic. That they have their uses. They're good. okay? That's about all I can say is good about an automatic. They're more expensive, they're heavier, harder to fix, harder to get, less control. And where the danger comes in a lot of people that manufacture the things and the engineers and all the powers to be don't understand is that shifting a truck makes you more in tune with the rig. You pick the gears. You're part of the power of that truck, selecting what gear you're using for a given situation. You always want to be in a gear so that if something happens in front of you, you have the option of using the power of the rig to power out of it. Not all, in fact, most situations don't require the brake. You can steer to avoid things way better than you can brake for them. You're not going to stop that rig in short distances, so have a different plan. Use the power of the rig and use the steering to avoid it rather than stopping before you hit it or before whatever the situation is in front of you. With an automatic, the automatic is always trying or seeking electronically, seeking to lower the RPM for the situation you're in. So sometimes they'll hunt back and forth. They'll downshift with a little bit. You ask for a little bit of throttle. You want to pick up a little bit more speed, and you push on it. It'll downshift on you. Or if you go in a situation where you need that power and you push on the throttle to accelerate out, the automatic has to downshift and trip over itself before it figures out what gear it wants to be in, and it's not as responsive as a manual transmission. Take, a senior truck driver. We are, cliche as it may sound, we become one with the truck. So that gear shift, I can feel what the truck is doing. I know the power of that truck for that given gear and what I can and can't do with it. Automatics take that away. The other problem with an automatic is you don't have the fine control of the truck. Backing up, for instance, is a nightmare in an automatic because they have electronic clutches in them. And when you're in reverse and you push on the throttle, there's delay. So when we get within, like you were saying before, these guys, put these trucks on the spot, right on a dime. You put a dime on the ground, tell me you want the bumper to be there, and I'll put it right there. But with the automatic, you have that delay in response from the truck. So when you're backing, especially up to a loading dock with the automatics, it gets within 2 feet of that loading dock. It gets really tricky backing in there without slamming into the loading dock because you have that electronic clutch in there and there's a delay. So did I give it enough throttle to get up there to the dock, or am I going to slam into the loading dock and look like a fool, like I don't know what I'm doing in here? So for those reasons, safety-wise included, young drivers, when they go out on the road, they got enough going on that they don't need to be separated from that truck. When I say become one with the truck, I mean like a new driver going out there doesn't have the feel, doesn't have that experience that a senior driver does. So by putting them in an automatic, you've taken that aspect away. They're not connected to the truck like a manual truck driver would be. So as a new driver, I think, my theory, my opinion of this whole thing is that it makes a new driver more dangerous in an automatic than it would in a manual.
Speaking of danger, one of my biggest fears that I think about all the time, I see a lot of people texting when they're driving, and it drives me absolutely. As you get older, I'm more careful than I've ever been, especially at night with people walking right on Boston Post Road. I'm deathly afraid of it. But the texting thing, what are your biggest safety concerns, or what's a driver's biggest safety concerns? Are they worried about the cars? I mean, I bet you wish there were no cars.
No, I don't say it like that, but we call them four-wheelers when we're out there on the CB and
They still have
refer
CBs?
to them. Oh yeah, we still have CBs. That's how we talk to each other, and no one else can interfere. You're talking over your phone, or you're trying to run on your headset on the phone. Somebody's listening to that somewhere. There's a GPS on the phone. That's when you watch the news in the morning and you see those yellow lines and green lines and red lines on the highway, and they know traffic's traveling 65 miles an hour on I-95. Where do you think they're getting that data from? Your phone, while you're in your car. You clicked on Google and you told Google it was okay to track you. So you go down the highway. Now Channel 8 buys that information from Google and puts it up on the screen. That's how they know 95 is moving at 20 miles an hour, because everybody's cell phone is going 20 miles an hour down the road.
How bad is 95?
95 is bad, very bad.
From what perspective?
I could tell you, I don't know the date, but back before Christmas, there was a Thursday that I was hauling from our pit in Old Lyme on Hatchett's Hill there out to State Pier in New London. We provide the material, the process, and the stone for that project at State Pier. And there were 6 accidents between exits 73 and 71, southbound. 6 of them between 9, it was 9 and I got knocked off about 15:30. Yep, in East Lyme. Between about 9 to about 15:30, 15:45 when I finally knocked off, there were 6 accidents on the southbound side. Multi-vehicle accidents, so banging into each other. And they all start with one of them texting, doing something, drifting off, hitting the guardrail, or a truck driver's nightmare is the ones that spin out in front of you, or they hit the guardrail and come back out across the highway, so now they're broadside to you when you're driving at them. That scares the heck out of us, because now I'm probably going to hit that car. There's not much room for me to go on 95 there. You got some ledge on one side of you, and you got the Jersey barrier on the other, and now you turn a car sideways in between both of those. There's not a lot of options there for me to choose from. So it's very dangerous, that section. They're supposed to redo all through. Manafort, I guess, has the job to redo exit 74 area, do that overpass.
Who knows what's going on with that?
That is going to be a nightmare. You live in Niantic, East Lyme, in that area, or Waterford, Old Lyme, and you got to cross that area or go through that area. Stand by. There's going to be hours, hour and a half, 2-hour delays.
Have you seen that new gas station they're building?
Yes.
Have you figured out how to get into that?
They built the Henny Penny on Route 85 when the Hendels was building that. I saw them putting the wall in behind it. And I was in the truck from the school on 85, and I said, you know what, I'm going to stop in there. I pulled in before they paved it, was getting ready to pave it, set up. I pulled in there, and I found the engineer on the site, and I said, hey, how are we going to get a rig around this building to what's now the fuel pumps on the left side of the building in there? How are we going to get these rigs in there? He said, easy, you just drive around the building and go right in. I said, do you want mine? I'll try it with the sleeper and a 53. I'll show you what I'm talking about. With the wheels up, meaning up at 41 feet on the trailer, makes it a shorter turning radius, I couldn't get to the fuel pump. The wall was too close to the store, and when I went around the corner, I couldn't get in the corner enough to come back down and get into the fuel pump. So he's scratching his head. They're ready to build this big stone wall. They actually had to take the footing out and move the stone wall back 11 feet into there so that when the rig came in, we could get far enough away to get straight to go into the fuel pump. And they actually turned the fuel pump a little bit on an angle so that we could get through it. This station here on Route 1, the first problem is getting in and out of it. that's scary, because you come over on Route 1, they come over 95.
Right.
You don't see them until they're coming down the hill there, or coming up from crossing the brook down there. You don't see them. You don't have a long a line of sight at that. So that's going to be, for tractor trailers, that's going to be tricky. And by advertising on the highway like that and being right there, and they sell diesel, they're going to get rigs in there, and it could get very ugly. I don't know that they're even going to fit. I'm looking at the back. I'm waiting to see where they do their finished product. I don't think you can get a rig around the back to the diesel pump, but we'll see what happens.
Speaking of diesel, you're over the road on a long trip. Well, credit cards. I mean, it's got to be an enormous. It's got to be an enormous fuel bill round trip.
Oh yeah.
What can that run into?
I made a run. Well, we have fleet cards. Like any big agency, we have our fleet cards that go back to the company. I made a run down south looking for cheap fuel. South Carolina's got the cheapest diesel in the country because they have less taxes. But I was searching around and I found one at $6.13 when I probably back in August, and I was excited. Because there was $6.13. There was fuel out there back in the height of this whole problem. There was fuel out there $6.79, $6.89 in the big truck stops. Yeah. So when we found these little places in Virginia or South Carolina, it was down $6.13. If you found it under $6 back when it was really ugly, you got on the radio and you let everybody know where it was. And even when you got up north, you see guys going south. You get on the radio and you tell them, "Hey, down in Virginia, this exit 161, go, take a left, and there's a mom and pops down there. You can fit the truck in there. It's only $5.19." They get because we're talking 280 gallons. If I'm running twin 140s. Most over-the-road trucks that are going long distance are run, even if you run twin 100s, you're talking 200 gallons of fuel. Oh, that's $1,000. You won't run them dry, so you can pay $850, $860 to fill up twin 100s. It can be twin 140s. You're putting in probably 250 gallons if you run them down in the summer. The wintertime, we tend not to. We tend to drive from full to half, and then fill them back up. Keep the condensation down. Try to prevent the freezing of your fuel, keeping them full. Plus, you have to remember too, is if I pull in a truck stop and I go to sleep at night for my 10 hours off, I wake up, there could be 3 feet of snow there. So if I pull in, the rule is you never go to bed empty. And I go to sleep, and I got an empty rig, and I get stuck in 3 feet of snow, and I can't get plowed out. I got to run the truck for heat. I could run it out of fuel. So you always fill before you go to bed when you pull into those truck stops.
If you're driving on a trip and you break down, what's that like?
It can be a nightmare. Depending on what it is, there are road service nationwide numbers that we call. We have, or call back to your dispatch and let your dispatch find somebody in the area that they want to send out to you. Most of us carry small toolkits. We can do little things, the airlines, the things that break are common. Lights, small electrical stuff. Sometimes, drive shafts. We can take the drive shaft off and limp it somewhere. If you got, something breaks and it's hanging off the truck, you finish taking the rest of it off and limp yourself. And then sometimes you just got to call the tow truck and deal with it. And that bill is, you're talking $1,200 for the tow truck just to pull up before he's even hooked to you. And then they start a mileage fee from there. So it gets very expensive breaking down over the roads.
And are there service centers? I mean, it's hard to believe that there's so many people that can fix these trucks. That's quite impressive.
Yeah, these guys are good for the most part. You have your shops that are kind of questionable, and you just don't go back there. But your national ones, like your Pilots, your Flying J's, Love, TA, they all have mechanics. They have 24-hour road service. They have tire service. You're probably going to need them for a tire more than you'll need them for anything. But we pull in, so if I'm over the road, I could pull in and I need an oil change, depending on where the owner of the truck wants the oil change. But I usually run somewhere in the 10 to 12,000 mile range over the road, or 500 hours on the truck. Modern oils are getting better, so it's not so risky running 15,000. Some guys will run 15. Some companies tout that you can run 25,000 on an oil change.
Really?
I'm not a fan of that because, like, any oil is going to break down. The viscosity is going to break down on the oil. So, in the filters are only going to go so long. So, I service them more frequently because that's my tool. If that truck breaks down, I don't make money. When you're out over the road, unlike a local job, the only time you get paid over the road is if the wheels are rolling. We get paid by the mile. We don't get paid by the hour. So if I sit in a truck stop broken down, I get breakdown pay, $60 a day, $80 a day, maybe. But that's it. I don't get my salary. The truck's not making money. I'm not making money. So I want to keep that thing rolling. So it becomes, preventive maintenance becomes very, very crucial in the over-the-road trucking world. So stay ahead of these things. Keep it serviced. Keep your filters clean. Adjust your brakes. Check for air leaks.
Now, is that the driver's responsibility to keep an eye on that and,
Yes.
and monitor it? And
Yes. Yep. That's when he does a pre-trip, before he starts, he'll go through the whole truck, test the brakes, test all the lights, make sure he's got all his emergency equipment, check the tire pressures, all his fluids. We carry extra fluids in the sleeper. And then after he parks, the best time to do an inspection is when you park. Because now if I find something wrong with the truck, I can put it in the shop while I sleep. If I find something wrong in the morning before I want to drive, now I'm cutting into my clock. I have to wait for them to fix my truck. I just ruined my day.
well, the truckers get pissed off when they have to stop if the truck stops for inspection.
Oh, well, I wouldn't say pissed off, but it does slow you down sometimes if there's a line, or if they want to just inspect. They have to do so many inspections a year to stay qualified, so they're going to pull somebody in there. But I can say for the most part, like Tennessee's known. Tennessee on I-40 in Tennessee, there's usually every weigh station in Tennessee is open. It seems like they're open 24/7. Anybody you talk to will tell you, if you want to get inspected, just go I-40 in Tennessee in either direction, and you'll get a scale house that's open. They're out there. They're doing a job, and they're keeping it safe. There are enough trucks, like anything else, that don't belong on the road that they see and takes away. It's like the guy in class with the big mouth. You just let him talk because it takes the heat. They call them heat seekers, right? So you get guys that go out there with a ratty truck that's 40 years old and they don't pay any attention to it. You're going to see it coming from the other end of the ramp. And they'll be like, okay, pull him in there and let him go in, and then you go in. As long as your lights are working and you're, underweight or at your weight, they don't bother you.
We spoke earlier about safety, and you mentioned the difference between driving up north and driving when you get in the southern states. Would you share that with us?
Well, yeah, we have that our little friend called black ice, and once the rig starts going, it takes exceptional skill to control a tractor trailer that's in a slide and prevent a jackknife. So you have to be extremely careful with a rig. Loaded rigs in a regular snow, it's not too bad. As long as you slow down, cut your speed down to 20, 25 miles an hour and just slow your roll, as we say, and get where you're going, you'll be okay. As long as those wheels are rolling, you're not going to have too much trouble because we got 80,000 pounds on our back. It probably on the drive wheels about 32 to 34,000. On the trailer, the same. Your steer tires are what you're worried about. You all know from driving in the snow that the front end washes out. I don't care who you are, you're done. If you touch that brake, now you're really cooked. There's nothing you're going to do to stop that rig from sliding. You got to keep those wheels rolling. Driving up north, especially in the winter, you have to add that in, the ice and everything. We say reduce your speed by 1/3 in the rain, 1/2 in the snow, and get off the ice. Don't drive on the ice. Zambonis are designed to drive on ice and they slide. So to get off the ice. Don't even be a hero out there and do it. But there's going to be guys that do, and there's going to be those accidents because you get the ones that don't want to be safe, and for whatever reason, I don't know, I can't think for them, but I have ideas, and they're going to crash. It's that simple. You're not invincible when it comes to the weather. You have to take that extra step and be extra cautious when you're out there doing that. Down south, you have the heat. Number one enemy of a tire is heat. So you got to check those air pressures. When you're changing climates like that, you go from hot weather to cold weather to hot weather. Make sure you check those air pressures in that tire, get them adjusted properly. The highways down south are concrete. It's a different driving down there. When it rains, concrete is very slippery. So you go down through I-20 in Louisiana, notorious for being a very rough road, offset. Even the left and right lanes are, can be 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch difference in height, and they'll pull your truck and yank the steering wheel on you. Seams in the concrete, that bump you get where you bump, 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 bump. You can time it depending on your speed. South Carolina, we have jokes on the radio like, somebody in South Carolina bought stock in concrete because all of a sudden all the roads you change over to concrete. And
what do you prefer?
The modern day asphalt. There's some asphalts they experiment with when you go down south as well. You see them up here a little bit, but they tend to do more testing down south where you'll see begin testing of, and the name of the asphalt is on there. There's somewhere in the vicinity of 17 to 18 different types of asphalt mixtures out there, and they test them to see which one can get the water off the highway faster, which one reacts better to the heat, which one reacts better to the cold, the salt, and all that. So, but a good paved asphalt, not a new one, an older one, it's got a little wear and tear on it, is the best way to go.
Tom, we started out at a half hour. Unfortunately, we're going an hour and we're out of time. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we close out?
Oh, we could go for a long time.
Would you come back and do it?
Absolutely, we can get more intricate and details of of shipping and receiving. The general public needs just to stay away from us. Yeah. Give us a room and respect us when we're out there. We got a lot going on.
By the way, folks, you can watch us on YouTube because we're modern here at Channel 25. I want to thank Tom MOYSEY for his time, valuable time. I really enjoyed it, and hope you do too. Murray, reporting from the city, too tough to die, New London.